One World Committee welcomes you to Virtual Living Library, where people are books who share their real-life stories with readers they may otherwise never meet, to dispel myths, stereotypes, and to promote connection and community. I hope you enjoy reading this book and hearing their story.
It was just an emotional time at that moment at a 21-year-old, because I grew up with a man who I thought was my dad, but he didn't really like to spend a lot of time with me. He was actually in the military, and he had another son, and my little brother and I, we were like a year and a half apart. So we went to school together and we knew who each other were, and we would spend holidays together. But I would always find out that my dad was in town when he was getting ready to leave. Even though I spent most of my time with his parents or with my mom's parents, so I would always get the call on Christmas Day or just after Christmas Day and come into town, but no one would tell me during that time. So it was hard to grow up feeling like I wasn't necessarily the son that he wanted in his life, even though he spent a lot of more time with my younger brother. Um, so that was a tough time, a tough thing to get over. As you can see, it still makes me a little bit emotional here and there. Um, but me and my brother always had a pretty good relationship. So even though after I found out that he wasn't my biological father, me and my brother, we still remain in contact. We were adults by then, you know. But one day my brother called me and he said that he was marrying my sister. My mom has myself, another son, and I have two sisters as well. My mom has four children. So I said, no, you're not. My sisters would have told me if you were marrying one of them, So this is me speaking to my dad's son. Um, and he said, no, I am. And I said, okay, well, who is she? So my biological dad, once I actually met him, he has five daughters and another son who's his other son's about nearly maybe 18 years younger than I am. So he's young enough to be my own son. So he told me that he was marrying one of his daughters. And I said, oh, okay. So I said, well, you are my brother. She is just a lady that I happen to share DNA with. I don't know her. I didn't know her well. I only knew that biologically we had the same father, but I knew him as my brother growing up because socially he was my brother. We were raised together. We lived in the same town, went to school together. So that's how I ended up having a brother and a sister married to each other. Not my actual biological brother, but he's my social brother because throughout my entire life, he's all I've known as my brother, and the lady who happens to be my sister, I don't know her that well. I know her more now, but I didn't know her at all at that time. So typically when I call that family, I usually call him because that's who I have the relationship with. So biologically, his wife is my sister. So I hope that helped explain that part of my story, but we can talk about that as well. I also grew up in a very, very religious family, a Pentecostal, strong Pentecostal family, but religion didn't hinder me. Yes, I heard messages against people like me, and I'm talking about people who are non-heterosexual. I heard those messages, but I also had a family that taught me to care for everyone, regardless of whatever it is that's going on in their life, because we may not agree with the way that they live, but we have to respect who they are and the story that they come with when they meet us in our presence. So they always taught me to be kind to people, regardless of how I'm feeling that day, because I don't know what that other person might be feeling, and they may be at the end of their rope on that day, right? So because my mother did not go to school and finish school, it motivated me that I felt that I needed to do those things. Growing up being non-heterosexual, I felt like I wasn't good enough because the church taught me I wasn't good enough. My dad, neither of them were acting like they wanted to be in my life, and I still don't have a strong relationship with either of them. Um, And I also didn't, when I did come out, I was reared to be a very strong individual to where if I needed something, ask for it. the answer is always no if I never ask for whatever it is that I need, right? What's the worst that a person could say? They could say no, but the answer is always no if I never ask. So I was ready to actually speak about my life, speak about whatever it is that's on my mind, and not be afraid to speak. So when I did come out, I was younger. I was a teenager, but when I spoke to my mother, I let her know, hey, if this is going to be a problem, then we don't have to stay on the phone talking about it. We can go our separate ways, and I appreciate that you still kept me, even though you needed help raising me, you know. And I didn't talk to her for a whole week. After that, I just told her, I hung up the phone, and I did not talk to her, and I did not talk to anyone that could speak to my mother for a week. When I did talk to her, I said, the first thing you can tell me is, are you going to be okay? And she said, yeah, I'll be okay. We'll have to work through it, but I'll be okay. I was like, okay. Because I wanted her to know what it was going to feel like to be without me. Because I had already known I knew enough that I knew that we may not have a good relationship and she may not want me in her life. So I wanted her to know what it would feel like without me. But I also, by that time, was much more independent. You know, I kind of really stopped having sort of a parent-child relationship with my mother when I was 11, because I moved in and I stayed completely with my grandmother. And I said, you just take care of my brothers and sisters. And from that moment on, I began to work. My first job was with the Kinder Housing Authority in New Orleans, and I worked as a counselor for children. And I was a child myself, but I was a mature child because I had to mature very, very early to help my mom with my siblings. You know, I took care of them. But when she got married, I just said, okay, you go and take care of my siblings, and I'll be fine with my grandmother, because her husbands were not the best choices, not in my mind, but you know. And I say husbands because she got married multiple times. So, but the bottom line is, I needed to go to school. I needed to do well. I always got good grades because I always felt like there was someone who did not necessarily care or want me. My grandparents always showed me that they loved me. And anytime that I wanted to do something, they never said no. They said, okay, maybe you can't do it today, or maybe not this manner, but if you can figure out how to execute whatever that is that you want to do, then go for it. So they always made me figure out and critically think about the world around me, how to navigate that world, and how to get things that I needed to get, you know, but also reminded me that not to take advantage of people, but to also be kind to them, you know. So I figured out how to get out of New Orleans, how to get out of the towns that are around there, the lack of things that people are doing. I wanted to go to the military because I was in the ROTC program when I was in high school. So when I was 17, I had to have my mother's permission. So I went to my mother and I said, I'm going to the military and I need your permission. I need you to sign this paper, because you don't have any money to send me to college and I have to prepare for that now. Mind you, I was a junior in high school at that time, but she understood because I clearly explained it to her, and she signed the papers. And I went to the military when I was in 11th grade, and I did a split training program to where I went to basic training between my 11th and 12th grade years. Then I came back and finished high school, and then I went to my advanced training after that. After I finished my advanced training, I did not start college that fall. I went to Germany to work for the military. And then I came back and started college in 2003. And then I rushed to catch up with everyone and finished in 3 years. And then I said, okay, I almost didn't graduate because I had to go back out of the country in 2006. But my stepdad also died that same semester. It was a whole lot going on. But I knew that I wanted to do this. I knew that I needed to do this. I knew that I had siblings that are younger than I am, and it's going to be hard for each one of us if nobody shows us that we can get out of being just stuck here in the South with not finishing high school. Because I have two siblings that didn't finish high school, and I have one that did. You know, so trying to push them while pushing myself. I'm going to pause because I see a question that asks, did I experience jealousy on my mother's side pointed towards my grandparents because of my preference to them? No, I did not experience that. And that's one of the greatest gifts that my mother gave me, was my freedom. And I've always told her that, you know, she understood that she didn't have the tools to help me. And she understood that her parents had more of a push for education than she did, and she never stepped in the way of what her parents did for me and what my dad's parents did for me. Even though biologically they were not my grandparents, they were down the street and they raised me my entire childhood. So they didn't treat me like I was not their grandchild. So even if everybody knew but me, you know, everyone said that it was my mother's choice, that no one told me the truth. And that created a rift in our relationship because when I used to come home, my mom used to give me Bible verses every holiday that I came home from college. Even though she said that she would accept my sexuality, she still gave me a Bible verse every time to try to convert me, you know, and try not to let me go to hell. And my grandma came in one day because I was crying in my bedroom after I came in for Christmas. And she said, "Did your mother give you that?" And I said, "Yes." And she took it. I don't know what she said to my mother, but my mother never did that again, you know, until we got better with social media. I guess I'm showing my age now because now, once we got social media, my mom started sending me more like religious videos. And one day, actually, it wasn't too long ago, it was a few years ago, I responded to her and I said, you know, you may not be trying to do this, but the impact that these videos are having on me is the same impact as the scriptures used to give me when I came home for Christmas. And I said, if that's not what you're trying to do, then I would ask you to stop doing that. You know, I continue to be a spiritual person, and she apologized immediately, and she has never done that again. She did not realize the impact of her actions. So religion taught me to have an ease with forgiveness, learning to forgive my parents, realizing that they are human, they are people, they have feelings, and they make mistakes as well. So I learned a long time ago to kind of make light of things, and I joke about things a lot, but I never felt like my mother had any jealousy towards my grandmother. She always calls my grandmother my other mother, or sometimes she's like, your mom wants you, and she never is referring to herself because a lot of people refer to my mother as my sister. My grandma sometimes forgets that my mom is my mom, and she'll say, your sister called, and I say, which one? Because I have to ask, because I need to know if she's talking about my mother. You know, I do my best to sort of still keep that relationship that my mom is my mom and allow her to be that. But she also realizes that I developed a lot of my personality and everything without her. You know, I developed the life that I have without her being there as a mother, but more so as a close relative, like a sister, because she allowed her mother to take over and her father. The other things that I want to say, the military it did what I needed it to do. You know, for 8 years I was in the military. I was in the Army, in case anybody was wondering. I was 92 Alpha, so I worked as a supply specialist, and I was trained in Fort Lee and Fort Jackson, South Carolina, Fort Lee in Virginia. But at undergrad years, I went to get a degree in anthropology, and as an anthropologist, you have to learn another language, and I learned Spanish at that time, even though I lived in Louisiana, where most people spoke English or French or Creole. I also spoke French and spoke Creole. I understood French. I haven't spoken Creole in a long time, but I still understand a good bit of it and have quite a few friends that still do speak it as well. But I used the military as my way to pay for college, to get myself out, to give me a boost out of New Orleans, to get away, you know, to get an education. I see someone ask, without having a strong fatherly role model in my life, did I find the military filled a void of structure? I has 3 brothers, and her brothers played the role of father for me. Besides my grandfathers, my mom's brothers were always there, and she has 1 older brother and she has 2 younger brothers. All of them have been in my life my entire life, and they played my fathers, especially the youngest one. Even though he's only 9 years older than I am, he has been more like a father to me than probably any man on the planet. When I went to college, he allowed me to stay with him and everything. But I also was kind of his live-in nanny because he has a younger son and he was a single father, so he worked. And when he worked, I had his son, who is now, I believe he's 21 or 22. But I had him as a child, raising him while his dad was working. And when his dad would come home, I would do my own schoolwork. So it was kind of a give and take. But my mom's brothers played the fatherly role. But I was also in junior ROTC all the way through high school. So I had a lot of structure in my life. But I'm coming from the background that I had, I did not depend on other people for that structure because I realized that my family didn't have that same structure. My mom didn't know what to do with life. She was just trying to figure out how to do these things, but she had had a life where people had made decisions for her and did everything for her. You know, being the only girl, she was limited in a lot of her choices. And then she went directly into getting married, and she had men that also made decisions for her. And I will say, at least one of my stepdads was a good father, but he was not a good husband. And I could realize her husbands were not treating her well. And that was hard to watch, which was another reason why I wanted to just stay with my grandmother, because I didn't want to harm them or harm myself, you know, because of what they were trying to do to my mother. And she was helpless to figure out how to navigate that. Um, but I didn't stop there. School kept going. After I finished school, it was kind of I let the wind take me. You know, I had people that thought I was smart enough to continue on. And even to the point where my old roommate, she filled out an application for me to become a merit scholar. And that's where they prepare you for grad school and help you learn how to do research. I said, if you think so, you can fill out the application for me. And she did. And they accepted me. And I said, okay, I'll give it a try. Grad school, they wanted me to apply for 10 schools. I applied for 3. They were like, please apply for 10. I was like, look, if it's for me, it's for me. If not, I have a career in the military. I'm okay with retiring there. But all the grad schools accepted me. My graduate exams were really, really great, which was surprising. I didn't think I was as smart as other people saw. And I said, okay, well, if grad school's going to accept me, I'll give it a try. You know, so I did, and I finished, and then I went back and continued on because I stepped into a classroom after I finished my master's degree, and that was back in 2009, and I loved it. I love that I could help people find, understand what they can contribute to knowledge. I loved all of those things. I loved helping. So I continued to teach, and to this day, I'm still teaching. And here we are, what is this, 11 years later, about to enter year 12 of teaching. So I say all of those things to say that where you come from does not have to dictate where you will go in life. And even though I came from a family that did not have the best education, I still was able to get that. And my sister, who did finish school, she also went to grad school, and then she went to get her doctorate, but she was miserable in her program. And I said, why are you doing it? She said, because you did. I said, quit. And she said, excuse me? I said, I don't want you to do this if you're miserable doing it. I want you to do it because you want to do it. I am already proud of what you have already done. So I'm also a teacher. My sister is a teacher. She's not teaching college. She teaches K-12. So she has taken and followed my footsteps, even though she hates to admit it. I love it. We have the same car and everything. So my whole family still lives in Louisiana. So I'm very, very thankful for them. So I'm gonna stop my story there, and I'm gonna answer this one question, then I'll jump into any other questions. I see someone asked, do I have any resentment towards my mother? I did have issues, and I did forgive her. But forgiving her doesn't mean that I forget, and I always let her know I don't hold anything against you because I know that you were a child at that time and you were just trying to figure out life. But I'm also human, so that means that I'm not going to always make the best choices myself, or my response to you may not always be the most welcoming, but I'll do my best to make sure. So I don't have any resentment toward her. We continue to talk almost 2-3 times a week. You know, we have even a better relationship now. So I'll stop there. Looks like Nicole might have a question.
Yes. Hi, Alexander.
Hi.
Your story has been very inspiring. One of the things that I was thinking on as you were speaking is the power that family secrets hold.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would like to, I will ask if you could like just talk about that a little bit, and how youth giving voice to those secrets has helped you with your healing?
Okay, that is a wonderful question because so many people don't understand the impact that a secret can have on someone else. You know, me having my first 2 decades of my life over that time, not knowing who my biological father was, but thinking that this man who treats me like he doesn't want me all the time, my family not seeing how that is hurting me over time, and my mom just trying to protect me from something that she didn't want to expose was that and I didn't even tell you all who that was. The man who was actually my biological father was the best friend of my stepdad. So that meant that my mom she was friendly. That's the best way that I can put it. I always tell her that. I said, you were friendly as a young person. So, but when I faced that reality, what I said was no apologies necessary. And what I mean by that is those choices that were made, maybe they harmed me in thinking that no one wanted me or I didn't have any value at that time. But I also learned to depend on myself. I learned that I couldn't depend on someone else for my own happiness, you know, and I also took sort of an inventory of my life looking at my uncles and looking at my grandmothers, my grandfathers, and how they played the role of parent for me. So I wasn't missing anything, and the things that I thought I was missing gave me the courage to be the person that I am today. So I kind of tried to take the positive out of it from that situation. So I would tell anybody, if you have a family secret, remember that your family, they're all human and they're all trying to find out how to navigate life based on what they know about life. You know, as a 14-year-old and my father was 16, I don't expect them to know much. You know, they may not have made the best choices, but they made the choices with the knowledge that they had at that time. But facing those things, I have a huge family, and my family, my very religious side of my family made me comfortable with the uncomfortable. Whenever we would fight, you know, with my cousins or something like that, they make us sit there and hold hands, and you're going to talk to each other at some point. You're not moving until you hug. We learn to face the discomfort in our family. We learn to face it so much that sometimes families start talking about secrets at Christmas holidays, and all we do is sit back with our eggnog and just watch. You know, oh, that's happening over here on that side of the family. You just hope it's not about you. But typically in my family, everybody knows everything about everybody. So we kind of put it all out on the table. But we realize that family is your one social group you don't get to choose. That is a group that you're given, and you have to figure out how to navigate what those people have and what they bring to the table. You're not going to like them all the time. You know, you just try to help each other be the best people that we can be. And sometimes doing that, it's not a pretty thing. So anytime a student is in my class and we have problems, I let them know this is the time to communicate. This is the time to talk, because if you don't talk to me, I cannot help you. You know, oh, I forgot. I did mention that I had to learn Spanish a long time ago. So during quarantine, one of those fun things that I've done was just have Spanish conversations every day. I do that because I realized as I've been here at this school, I'm at GCC, if I did not mention that to everybody, is that I have sometimes students who are in English classes while they're taking sociology. And if you're taking sociology, it's hard enough in your own language, you know, so I don't want a barrier between me and my students. So I want them to be able to ask questions, even if English is a barrier for them, because I've had students fail my class because they couldn't understand what I was saying. And they did not stop and ask the question. If they had asked, they would have known that I actually understand Spanish just fine and I could respond to you. It just might take me a moment sometimes, depending on what it is that we're talking about, but I can always help them. So I still do that every day. People just don't usually know that much about me. So, any other questions? I know I've talked like all this time, and I want to be respectful of people's time. I apologize. My story is probably way more detailed, but I try to give you the quick version. Feel free. I don't have anywhere that I have to be, so I'll be here for the intermission time right now. So if you have questions, definitely stay with me and ask those questions.
I wanted to say thank you so much for your story, and very inspiring. And I'm so glad that you are able to have picked up Spanish. I took like 3-4 years of it and I still can't get it right, but we can get by, right? But yes, thank you so much. I really enjoyed hearing from you.
Well, thank you for listening. And yes, we can get by. You know, one of the things I would tell people is if we get over ourselves, we can definitely get by. You know, I didn't even think about talking about the arts, but I started dancing when I was 27, and I've done so much in dance that I never thought I would ever do. And now I do it all the time. I perform quite a bit, you know, even during this time, I've done a lot of virtual performances over the break. So I'm saying break, quarantine while I've been home. So yeah, I had to get over the embarrassment and just start making myself speak. And now conversations are a lot easier. They're so easy. Um, I went to a couple of the books yesterday as well, and I enjoyed them. So that was nice to hear. In between things that I had going on at work, I listened to a few of the books. I actually invited my class to one yesterday. We started our class with a book because it was on sexuality and religion, and I teach human sexuality as well as intro and stuff. So we listened to a speaker speak on sexuality and religion at the beginning of our class, and then we came back and talked about it, and then we continued on with our lecture after that. So I just brought the whole class. I was like, we're going to start the first 30 minutes in this book, and I gave them the link to the book, said, we'll come back after it's finished. So I just sent the invite to all of my students. So I told them to go whichever books they feel, you know, or they have time to go to. So, but yeah, yesterday I brought my entire class to one. But yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for having me. If we do this again, I would definitely do it again in the future. You know, there are so many different aspects. I didn't realize how hard it would be to kind of shrink that up because I usually can be pretty concise, but there's so much to talk about that I put in my book cover. It's like, oh, there's just too much I put in here. You have a book too, right? Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna try to come to yours, and there's also Notion. I believe she has a book as well. I'm gonna try. I think it's this afternoon, but I have meetings in between things, so I'm gonna do my best to get to hers as well.
Yeah. Have a great day, Alex.